We have to talk about some new tech that's probably going to finally dethrone Spirit Wave as the strongest Necromancer build this season, but for you to really understand what I'm talking about, we have to have a very quick understanding of how Bone Spirit works. Output that it's about to do is going to be stunningly ridiculous. And I'll very quickly break down the math because it's actually fairly easy to understand, but let's just look at what Bone Spirit does mechanically right now. The long and short of it is that we managed to take Bone Spirit Necromancer and make it overpower 100% of the time with Banished Lord's Talisman. You get up to over 275 maximum essence, means every single time that you cast Bone Spirit, it is guaranteed to overpower, and then it resets Banished Lord's Talisman, so your next cast also does it. While we've had to figure out how to manage cooldown reduction and essence generation, etc., in Season 6, it is next to none one of the most insane damage dealers that exists, outside of the Spiritborn, of course, right? Like, that thing's eventually going to get fixed. Ignore the Spiritborn for a quick second. We're talking about the Necromancer. But once you have your 275 essence spent, again, whenever I cast Bone Spirit, it's going to overpower. So let's go ahead and shoot the brand new training dummy in Kurost, a lot more roomier in here. Can we actually expand Kyovashads as well, devs? I'd appreciate it. But I'm going to go ahead and cast Bone Spirit, and bada bing, bada boom, it overpowers. Now, I'm doing a measly 3.7 thousand damage. You know, just a real quick couple million without speccing into this thing at all. But that's not really what we care about. It was the addition of the Imprisoned Spirit aspect that really pushed Bone Spirit even further. Imprisoned Spirit says that when Bone Spirit explodes inside of a bone prison, which we always run Path of Trag'Oul, blah, 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 you don't need to worry about that. It's going to explode in additional time, doing upwards of 80% of its normal damage. So if you're trying to understand this as a damage multiplier, if you do 100% of your damage one time, you do 80% of your damage another time, that's taking your base damage and multiplying it by 1.8. Okay, we got that there. So let me just show you that in real time so you get an idea of what it looks like. So with this aspect on, I cast my Bone Prison, and then I go ahead and fire my Bone Spirit, and it overpowers twice. Cool. Without doing anything else, I just went from doing about 3 million to, in total, 74 million damage. Now, that number is pretty small in comparison to other things, but again, keep in mind here, this is a Blood Surge Necromancer build, and I have a whopping single point allocated to Bone Spirit here. So we're doing pretty good for a build that's meant to be doing overpowered Blood Surge damage. But okay, great, that's how it currently works. And basically what the build seeks to do is just fill in a ton of other multipliers, even going so far as to continue to use Serration, which represents a whopping 40 to 45% damage bonus. Not nothing, but not anything that you would write home about. But they also added in the aspect Phasing Poltergeist. Now, what does Phasing Poltergeist say? Phasing Poltergeist says that when Bone Spirit explodes, that's the keyword, remember, explodes, it's going to spawn 3 more Bone Spirits that all seek out nearby enemies, dealing a percentage of its damage. This effect can only occur once per cast. So we have explodes and cast here. Okay, great. To calculate the relative damage increase of Phasing Poltergeist, you just have to understand that doing 40% of your damage 3 times is doing 120% of your damage. So if you have 100% of your regular Bone Spirit damage, and then you have 3 of 40% of that, you're doing 220% of your damage. It's like a 120% damage multiplier or a 2.2 multi. Okay, great, we're there. Now those keywords though are really important, because what does Imprisoned Spirit say? Imprisoned Spirit says when Bone Spirit explodes, not when you cast it or whatever, but when it explodes, it's going to explode in additional time for 80% of that damage. Now what's the problem? How is this new tech? Why haven't we been using this the entire time? Well, remember how my Bone Spirit overpowered twice because it exploded twice? It turns out that up until we think patch 2.0.3, which was completely unannounced and nobody talked about it and the devs never brought it up, Phasing Poltergeist now also overpowers. Before it didn't. It basically had forgotten the fact that the initial explosion overpowered and was just doing base damage. And while that's perfectly fine, for a build that completely scales overpower damage, it was a drop in the bucket. We weren't using it up until today. Now what you're going to see is I'm going to shoot my automatic overpower Bone Spirit. It's going to explode twice inside of my Bone Prison, and then each one of those explosions are going to spawn 3 that are all then going to hit the target. That is a total of 8 instances of damage. And it's really important that it is multiple instances of damage, because that has a huge impact on like different lucky hit chance modifiers and things that say hitting a target multiple times, etc, etc, etc. But mathematically, the damage starts to get pretty nutty. But let's go ahead and see it in action. So I'm going to cast my Bone Prison. I'm going to cast my Bone Spirit. It explodes, blah, 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 blah. See all that? It's nutty. We just added millions and millions and millions and millions, and when you actually scale it, billions and billions and billions of damage to the build. Now, to really break it down, like mathematically, I'm just gonna very quickly pull up a data sheet. It's gonna be fairly simple, I promise. Don't let your eyes glaze over, but you need to see the damage numbers in comparison to one another just to get a really good idea of what this all means. Let's just say we have 1,000 base damage just to make this easy. Imprisoned Spirit is an 80% damage increase. This is a 1.8 total multiplier. Serration is a 45% damage increase. This is a 1.45. And what that means is that the whopping total would be this, and this, and this, up to 2,610 damage. And what that basically means is that the difference here, if I were to blow this up just so it's a little bit easier to see, the difference here, boop, 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 this divided by this is a whopping 2.61 times damage. So that's your 1.8 multiplied by your 1.45, just to show you that, boop, 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 is your 2.61 multiplier here. And that's what we expect, and that's pretty good. 2 aspects increasing your damage by more than 160% is kinda cracked, right? But now we have phasing Poltergeist. I just used the power of editing. Sound off down in the comments if you realized what I fixed. I promise I do know how to spell. But for this example, we're going to use that same base 1,000 damage. Imprisoned Spirit gives us a second explosion that's worth 80% of our damage, so that's just a 1.8 multiplier. And then phasing Poltergeist gives us 3 spirits that are worth 40% of the normal damage. So it's going to be 40% of the 1,000 damage 3 times over, and then 40% of the 800 damage 3 times over. So it's just straight up a 120% multiplier, which we write as 2.2. Now, how much damage do we do with phasing Poltergeist, effectively more than doubling the damage output from the first and the second explosion? Well, all of a sudden, we're doing 3,960 damage. Now, what does that mean as a total multiplier? Just these 2 aspects, how much is it increasing our damage by? The damage bonus here is representative of a 3.96 multiplier. This is nearly quadrupling our damage from 2 aspects. That's not something that's normally heard of. So bigger number good, bigger number better, but what is the final difference? How much damage have we gained now that we get to swap from an aspect that said 45% bonus damage to an aspect that says 120% bonus damage? Well, we just take what our final damage number was here in comparison to what our previous one was, and this is representative of a greater than a 51% damage increase. Going from a 45% damage multiplier to a 120% damage multiplier has taken the damage and increased it by 50% on top of it. We were already seeing things like 30 billion damage procs, and then adding on an additional 50% there, and then the fact that it's going to explode twice, and then those 2 explosions are each going to shoot out 3 missiles that all then explode on the target is going to give unparalleled clear speed and massive amounts of efficiency gain for Bone Spirit. Oh, and add on to that, the Shroud of False Death now exists. And I'm not sure if it makes it into the final version of the build, but that's like another like 46% damage multiplier, including all of the various ways that it's going to initiate and empower systems in the passive skill tree. But check out my video about Shroud of False Death if you haven't heard about this armor, or if you're confused by it's just showing up everywhere. I'll go ahead and link it right above. You don't want to miss it because the numbers there get pretty ridiculous as well. But now that Imprisoned Spirit works with phasing Poltergeist, Bone Spirit's damage just went through the roof effectively for free, and I'm really excited to see what people like Sirach, who is already pushing on Bone Spirit and who's one of the writers now from Maxwell's Necromancer class, what they're able to do with it. I myself am going to start putting together the gear. I just finished doing Minions and Sever and Bone Spirit and Blood Surge, so I gotta go get the stuff to do it, but look forward to a video covering it very soon, as well as look to an update on Maxwell as soon as we are done fine-tuning everything, get the exact combination right, so that you can benefit from this insane amount of additional damage. I'm going to try to get that out to you as soon as I can. Sound off down in the comments. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I've been trying to bring you an insane amount of information as fast as I possibly can. So if you appreciate it, or if you benefited from it, or if you just want to stick around and make sure you don't miss out on anything, you're going to want to click that button. I promise I don't spam you. I don't like just ping you all the time. I'm not like that. I need the numbers. We're about to hit 60,000, which is a huge landmark for the channel. And I'm very close to finally reaching that 100,000 silver play button, which would be one of the biggest milestones in my career. So if you could help me along the way, I'd appreciate you. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope that helps you to better absolutely smash the meta with already the strongest necro build that exists. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.